There is no way people will think I'll do such a thing. They are trying to destroy my legacy, everything I've worked for.
He is the superintendent of distribution operations for the Harlan County Rural Electric Cooperative, a public utility serving rural southeastern Kentucky. He has worked there for 14 years. Every lineman in 3 counties reports up through him. The board quotes him at annual meetings. His name is on the safety plaque in the break room. He is also, at this exact moment, about to be arrested for stealing $510,000 from that same cooperative, moving public utility money, bit by bit, into a private solar installation company that he secretly owned. 3 federal charges. Maximum prison exposure, 27 years. Now here is a question worth thinking about before we go any further. If you were the person managing the maintenance budget for an entire county power grid, and you were also the person who decided which contractors got paid, would anyone even notice if the money stopped going where it was supposed to? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to see what you think. This channel covers white-collar crime, the people who commit it, and the systems that made it possible in the first place. Subscribe and hit the bell, because this one goes deep. Stewart D. Reno was born in 1981 in Cumberland, Kentucky. If you have never been to that part of the country, picture this: mountains on every side, coal dust in the air, and a town that has been economically struggling for longer than most of its residents have been alive. Harlan County sits in the far southeastern corner of Kentucky, deep in Appalachian coal country. It is the kind of place where people stay because their family is there, here, and leave because there is no other choice. Stewart's family stayed. His father, Gerald Reno, worked as a shift foreman at a local strip mine, up before dawn, home after dark, the kind of man who kept a schedule and expected everyone around him to do the same. His mother, Diane, kept the books for a small Baptist church on the edge of town. Between the two of them, the household ran. Not comfortably, but steadily. There was always food, the bills got paid, that was the standard, and Stewart grew up inside it. Then the summer of 1994 hit. A late-season storm rolled through Harlan County in August and knocked out power to their neighborhood for 9 straight days. 9 days without electricity in the middle of a humid Kentucky summer. No fans, no refrigeration, no lights after dark. Gerald Reno, being the kind of man he was, pulled out a notebook and started logging everything. Every outage update he heard on the radio, every repair crew he spotted on the road, every hour that passed without the lights coming back on. Stewart, who was 13 at the time, started his own log. His was neater, more organized. He used columns. He cross-referenced the crew sightings with the outage zones his father had sketched on a hand-drawn map. By day 4, he had a rough picture of the repair sequence before the utility company had announced it publicly. His school counselor, reviewing his file the following year, wrote a single note that ended up meaning more than anyone realized at the time. Stewart has an unusual aptitude for systems thinking. He carried that aptitude straight into Eastern Kentucky University, where he enrolled on a partial academic grant and studied electrical technology. He graduated in the middle of his class, nothing remarkable on paper. But one of his professors later remembered him for something specific. Not his grades, but his fixation on procurement paperwork. While other students focused on the technical side of power systems, Stewart wanted to understand how the contracts worked. Who ordered what? Who approved it? How the money moved from one place to another. At 24 years old, Stewart D. Reno was hired as a junior distribution technician at the Harlan County Rural Electric Cooperative. It was the same cooperative that had sent repair crews down his street in the summer of 1994. The same organization whose work schedules a 13-year-old boy had been quietly tracking from a notebook on his kitchen table. He knew the system before he ever walked through the door. He just had to wait for the system to trust him completely. Stewart started at the bottom, the way most people do. Junior distribution technician. The guy who shows up early, carries the equipment, reads the fault logs, and does not complain about it. That was Stewart in 2001. And within the first few months, his supervisors noticed something that set him apart from the other new hires. He never missed a deadline. Not once. In a field where report backlogs are common and paperwork piles up fast, Stewart turned everything in on time, every time. His fault log readings were clean and accurate. His equipment checks were thorough. When a substation issue came in, he could look at the data and identify the problem faster than technicians who had been doing the job for a decade. His supervisors did not make a big deal out of it. They just kept promoting him. 3 years in, he was a crew lead. A few years after that, distribution supervisor. By 2012, 11 years after walking in as a junior technician, Stewart D. Reno was named Superintendent of Distribution Operations for the Harlan County Rural Electric Cooperative. It was the top operational role in the building, and it came with something that at the time everyone considered perfectly reasonable: total control over the cooperative's external contracts. In his role as superintendent, Stewart had the authority to select vendors, approve contracts, and sign off on invoices for any grid maintenance or infrastructure work that came in under $250,000. That threshold existed specifically to keep routine operational spending moving without slowing things down at the board level. The thinking was straightforward. Amounts under that ceiling were too small and too frequent to require a board vote. One signature was enough: Stewart's signature. For day-to-day operations, this made complete sense. The cooperative ran on maintenance work. Substations needed servicing, lines needed inspecting, equipment needed replacing. If every invoice under $250,000 had to go to the full board, nothing would get done on time. So the system gave that authority to the superintendent, because the superintendent was supposed to be the most trustworthy person in the building. Among the staff, Stewart had a reputation that fit that description almost perfectly. Steady, fair. He did not micromanage, but he knew everything that was happening in his department. He was occasionally hard to read, a little distant, the kind of person who kept professional and personal completely separate, but nobody had a bad word to say about him. Board members worked his name into presentations at annual meetings. Every year at the co-op's member appreciation dinner, Stewart stood at the front of the room and delivered the safety briefing. Same structure every time: clear, organized, precise. He was, by every measure the cooperative had, exactly the kind of person you build a system around. Everyone at HCREC believed Stewart D. Reno was the most institutional man they had ever hired, the most reliable, the most deeply woven into how the place functioned. And they were not wrong about any of that. They were just wrong about what it meant. To understand what Stewart was able to do, you first need to understand what kind of organization the Harlan County Rural Electric Cooperative actually was, because it was not the same as your city's power company, and that difference matters a lot. Rural electric cooperatives are not municipal utilities. They are not run by a city government or overseen by a state comptroller. They are member-owned, nonprofit organizations, meaning the people who receive electricity from the cooperative are technically its owners. That structure was designed to serve small, spread-out communities that larger utility companies did not want to deal with. It works reasonably well, but it also means the oversight structure is much lighter than what you would find at a public utility operating inside a city. There is no city auditor reviewing the contracts. There is no state office monitoring the day-to-day spending. The cooperative governs itself through a volunteer board made up largely of local community members, and it trusts its professional staff to keep things running honestly between board meetings. At HCREC specifically, the contract approval structure worked like this. Anything under $250,000 required only the superintendent's signature. Once an invoice came in, it was matched against a purchase order, but that matching process was handled internally by the same department that had issued the purchase order in the first place. There was no independent check. The department essentially verified its own work. The accounting software made things worse without anyone realizing it. HCREC ran on an older platform that cross-referenced vendor tax identification numbers against a fixed internal list. When a new vendor needed to be added to that list, a department head could do it without board approval, as long as the vendor's expected billing stayed under the quarterly review threshold. No vote. No outside verification. One person, one decision, vendor approved. External audits did happen, but only once every 2 years. The same regional accounting firm had held that audit contract for 11 consecutive years. They knew the cooperative well, which sounds like a good thing until you realize that familiarity can also mean routine. Their audit process focused primarily on capital expenditures, large infrastructure purchases, equipment acquisitions, major construction projects, operational vendor payments, the steady flow of smaller maintenance invoices that kept the grid running month to month received far less scrutiny. Put all of that together, and here is what you get. Below the $250,000 threshold, one-person controlled vendor selection, contract approval, invoice sign-off, and the ability to add new vendors to the approved list. The internal check on that process was performed by the same department the person ran. The external audit reviewed different spending categories, and the board only saw what rose above the threshold or got flagged by staff. The system was not poorly designed out of laziness. It was designed for a specific assumption that the superintendent was honest, that the person sitting at the center of all that authority was the last safeguard, not the threat. It was a system built entirely on trust. Stewart D. Reno had spent 14 years making sure he was the most trusted person in the building. Now he knew exactly what to do with that. For 17 years, Stewart D. Reno did not steal a single dollar from the Harlan County Rural Electric Cooperative. Not one invoice padded, not one contract steered, not one vendor payment redirected. Whatever was going on inside his head during all those years, the line held. Then 2018 arrived, and everything changed. Early that year, Stewart's wife received a diagnosis that would reshape the entire financial structure of their lives. A degenerative spinal condition, the kind that does not get better, only managed. The kind that means doctors, specialists, procedures, medications, and equipment month after month with no clear endpoint. In the first year alone, their out-of-pocket medical costs climbed past $40,000. The cooperative's employee health plan covered some of it, but there was a cap, and they hit it fast. The rest landed directly on Stewart. He was not a man who asked for help. He was not a man who talked about personal problems at work. He was the person other people leaned on, not the other way around. So he sat with the numbers quietly, ran the calculations, and at some point in the middle of 2018, Stewart D. Reno made a decision that would define the rest of his life. He registered a company. Reno Energy Solutions, LLC, was incorporated in Tennessee, not Kentucky, putting it one state away from the cooperative's home turf and outside the immediate reach of local business registries. He put it in his brother-in-law's name. Darnell Pickett signed the paperwork and stepped back. On paper, Pickett was the owner. In practice, Stewart ran everything. In November 2018, Reno Energy Solutions submitted its first invoice to HSREC, $34,000 for rural substation weatherization materials. Stewart reviewed the invoice, matched it to a purchase order his department had generated, and approved it. No materials were ever delivered. The money moved from the cooperative's account into Reno Energy Solutions, and from there into Stewart's control. That was the first one. In 2019, 7 more invoices followed, totaling $112,000. The descriptions varied: equipment servicing, line inspection support, materials procurement, but the pattern was identical. Invoice submitted, Stewart approves, money moves, nothing delivered. Then 2020 arrived, and the scheme grew faster than Stewart had probably planned. The COVID pandemic created budget chaos across nearly every organization in the country, and rural utilities were no exception. Internal review cycles at HCREC loosened. Staff were working remotely or on reduced schedules. The normal rhythm of oversight got disrupted. That year, $198,000 moved through Reno Energy Solutions, the largest single-year total so far. By 2021, Stewart made a calculated adjustment. He began using some of the money to actually purchase solar installation equipment, which Reno Energy Solutions then resold to real clients in Tennessee. The company picked up 2 legitimate contracts. It now had a website, a service record, and actual revenue. If anyone ever looked closely at the vendor relationship and asked why HSREC was paying a Tennessee solar company for grid maintenance work, Stewart had an answer ready and a functioning business to point to. By the end of 2021, $510,000 had moved through the scheme. Stewart was running a legitimate business, a fraud operation, a cooperative budget, and a carefully maintained story. All four at the same time, without missing a single report deadline. Cases like this don't start with greed. They start with a gap in a system, in oversight, in someone's personal finances, and a person who knows exactly where the edges are. Subscribe if you want to understand how these systems actually work. Hit the bell. We go deeper every week. Stewart did not get caught because someone at HREC finally noticed something was wrong. He got caught because of a routine checkup that had nothing to do with fraud. In March 2022, a compliance analyst working for the Tennessee Valley Authority was conducting a standard grid reliability assessment across several rural cooperatives in the region. It was the kind of review that happens regularly, checking whether utilities are maintaining their infrastructure properly, cross-referencing payment records against licensed contractors to make sure qualified vendors are doing the work. Routine, administrative. The analyst was not looking for fraud. He was looking at paperwork. When he ran HCREC's vendor payment data against the Kentucky State Contractor Licensing Database, one name came up 19 times in the payment ledger without a single match in the licensing records. Reno Energy Solutions LLC had been paid 19 times by a Kentucky utility cooperative. It held no Kentucky contractor's license. It had no registered address in the state. It did not exist, officially, anywhere that Kentucky could see it. The analyst flagged it and passed it up the chain. TVA referred the anomaly to the Kentucky Attorney General's office, and from that point, the investigation moved quickly. State investigators subpoenaed HREC's full accounts payable records and pulled every document connected to Reno Energy Solutions. What they found across those 19 invoices was difficult to explain away. Every invoice had identical formatting. The invoice numbers ran sequentially, with no gaps, meaning Reno Energy Solutions had no other clients generating invoices between the ones sent to HREC. And every single approval signature on every single invoice belonged to one person, Stewart D. Reno. Investigators then pulled Stewart's personal banking records. What they found there removed any remaining doubt. Within 72 hours of each HREC payment clearing into the Reno Energy Solutions account, a transfer moved into a secondary LLC account that traced directly back to Stewart. Inside that account, investigators found a $74,000 recreational vehicle purchase, 2 international wire transfers, and a $38,000 payment applied to Stewart's home mortgage. Then they found the texts. A recovered exchange between Stewart and Darnell Pickett from November 2021 read like a quiet instruction between two people who had been doing this long enough to stop being careful. Bump the next one to 28. We need cushion before Q4 review. Pickett replied, "You sure? That's the 4th this quarter." Stewart's response took less than 2 minutes. "I signed the review. Send it." In February 2022, investigators executed a search warrant on Stewart's home office. They were looking for financial records, electronic devices, and business documents. What they also found, sitting on the corner of his desk, was a spiral-bound notebook. Handwritten. Inside, listed in careful columns, was every invoice number, every payment amount, and every corresponding personal expenditure the money had covered. Nothing was missing. Nothing was out of order. Neat columns. Organized entries. The same structured, methodical handwriting that his school counselor had noted in a file back in 1994. Stewart had kept a log of everything, just like his father taught him, just like the 13-year-old boy tracking repair crews during a 9-day blackout. He had written it all down. The body cam footage picks back up where we started. April 14th, 2022. The HREC district office in Cumberland, Kentucky. Stewart is at his desk, same polo shirt, same monitor, same coffee mug. 2 investigators and a state trooper come through the door. One of the investigators pauses for just a fraction of a second before speaking, the kind of pause that comes from knowing exactly what you are about to do to someone's life. "Mr. Calloway." Another pause. "Mr. Reno, federal wire fraud. Step away from the desk." Stewart stands slowly. There is no panic in his face, no sudden movement, no attempt to reach for anything. He pushes his chair back, straightens up, and when he speaks, his voice is completely controlled. "I want to call my attorney. I'm not saying anything. I want to call my attorney right now. You'll have that opportunity, the investigator says. And that is the last thing Stewart D. Reno says on camera. He is walked out through the Cooperative's main bullpen with his hands cuffed in front of him. 12 employees are in that room. Some of them have worked under Stewart for over a decade. They watch him walk past the desks, past the copy machine, past the break room door where his safety plaque is still hanging on the wall. Nobody says anything. The door opens. He is gone. The charges filed against him were federal wire fraud on 3 counts, 1 count of money laundering, never, and 1 count of making false statements to a federally regulated entity. Darnell Pickett, faced with the full weight of the evidence against him, cooperated with investigators and pleaded guilty to 1 count of wire fraud conspiracy. He received 18 months of probation and was ordered to pay back $22,000. His cooperation was noted by the court. Stewart's legal team fought back on 2 fronts. They argued that the TVA referral had exceeded its jurisdictional authority and that Stewart's invoice approvals fell within the normal boundaries of his role. Both motions were denied. By January 2023, facing a mountain of documented evidence, including his own handwritten notebook, Stewart pleaded guilty to 2 counts of wire fraud and 1 count of money laundering. Sentencing came in March 2023. U.S. District Judge Patricia Osei Bonsu looked at Stewart D. Reno across the courtroom and delivered a statement that did not leave much room for interpretation. Mr. Reno, you exploited the trust of a cooperative whose members are among the most economically vulnerable in this Commonwealth. You understood their system better than anyone, and you chose to use that understanding against them. 6 years and 4 months in federal prison. Full restitution of $510,000. A lifetime ban from any fiduciary role in a utility or public benefit organization. Back at H. Shrek, the board moved quickly. Dual signature approval was required for all vendor payments above $10,000. The 2-year audit cycle was replaced with quarterly external reviews. New vendor applications now required board notification regardless of billing amount. Stewart's office was reassigned to a new hire within the month. His safety plaque, 14 years of 0 lost time incidents, was taken down from the break room wall. No one filed a record of where it went. Stewart D. Reno knew that system better than anyone alive. He helped write its procedures. He trained the people who worked beneath him, and for 4 years, none of that stopped him because the system had no way to protect itself from the person it trusted the most. That is always how it ends. The threat was never a stranger. It was the man whose signature made everything official.